Had you seen this before?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I have.
I
Have
had
you?
I had seen it once before as well, and I enjoyed it. It'd been a while. I hadn't seen it since then, so it was cool to revisit it for this episode.
Yeah, it's pretty dope. Um, it's real. We're in this like really interesting time, and I love it because it seems like in the heyday of like '80s, there was like certain people attached to certain horror movies where it's like, oh wow, that's cool that that special effects designer also did this other thing, or that director's doing this thing, and it feels like we've shifted now into like fight directors and fight choreographers are the guys where it's like, oh, they know how to make a good movie. Yeah,
Hmm.
I'll go watch that because of them, you know? And it's so interesting because like of this group of people, this guy who directed this movie was an uncredited co-director for John Wick. And then, he went on to do Deadpool and this one and Hobbs and Shaw, you know and it's really interesting that it's like there's oh, and he produced Nobody, right? So it's
Right.
like there's a few people producing a lot of like really awesome action movies, that all have worked together, you know.
Hmm.
It's really cool. And it seems like that's what's happening with action movies right now is now it's like, oh, who's the fight choreographer? Who's the director? Oh, I'll go see that now because of all the other shit that's been really cool that they've done, you know?
Hmm.
So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's neat to see, and it's difficult to look at one of these and not think of the others. And
Yeah.
I think there's maybe a slightly negative connotation to that as well because of that sort of attachment. Someone might be less willing to judge a movie like this on its own merits because of the John Wick connection. Because I've seen that come up in a lot of people's reviews as well, but we can talk
Do
about
you?
that later on.
Sure. Yes. 'Cause I would like to expand on that
All right.
because part of me thinks it's kind of silly to do that, but we'll get there. We'll get there. So yeah, we'll be talking about Atomic Blonde some more in just a minute. But you're like, well, we should be more thoughtful, and I want to be a sledgehammer. Bam! Right on someone's forehead.
All right. Well, let's get into that then.
So first, like, does anyone really care that Avatar 2 is coming out? I mean, I don't care. I don't know anyone who cares. Since the first Avatar came out, we've had the entire MCU happen, right? And now, like, Avatar 2 is finally coming out. And it's supposed to be like the end. It's supposed to be this great thing. Dude, it just came out that Avatar 2 was like so expensive that it's going to cost, like, it has to gross $2 billion to make a profit.
Wow.
What? Like you're your ego is so big that you think that that's tangible. Like what do you think you're going to do? Like 3 billion on this movie?
When you say you,
Doubtful.
you're referring to James Cameron.
Yes, him,
Okay.
particularly him. James Cameron believes that like my movies are so good that just the first run is going to make over $2 billion. Give me a break. I just like what the hell, you know? Um and then on top of that, like the movie's going to be like over 3 hours. Like and he had an argument. James Cameron was basically telling studio heads to like get the hell out of his office because they said like you need to shorten this. And he's like, I'm James Cameron, I can do what I want.
Hmm.
And it's like, yeah, that's to a certain extent. Yeah, you can do what you want. You've made money hand over fist. But Avatar in particular, we've said it before, is just dances with wolves in space, you know?
Hmm.
So it kind of blows my mind that that guy thinks he can do, like, he's so good at what he does he thinks that he can make that type of money, and he thinks he can say like, no, I'm doing everything accurate. I think that's like the problem that I have right now. I don't believe that Avatar was particularly great. I thought it was mediocre. The special effects at the time were really good.
Yeah.
There's no
Broke some
denying
new
that
ground with
at
the 3D
all.
technology.
Of course.
Yeah.
There's not an argument in that. But it's like, okay, man. Like it's the story unobtainium. Okay. Unobtainium.
I'm not especially excited about Avatar 2. I mean, to your point about we've had the entire MCU happen, which has gone on for more than 10 years, so it's been more than 10 years since we've had Avatar. There there are people that are excited about it. I was asking someone at work there, like, I was like, well, I'm pretty much done with movies, like, till the end of the year, and like, oh, Avatar is coming out at Christmas. Like, really? We're still excited for that? Like, oh, well, yeah, but they loved the other one. I never felt that connection. It'll be interesting to see
No.
if this is some, repeat lightning in a bottle worldwide phenomenon like the first one was. Because the whole thing with, your 3-hour movie that costs $2 billion is that you can't show it as many times in a day. So you right there, the run has to go on for longer, or more,
Yes.
and more people have to attend every one of those 3-hour shows in order to
Right.
climb that mountain. So, hey, if he can do it, hats off.
That goal
I'm not
seems
gonna go.
unattainable.
I'm not gonna go see it. Oh, I see where you're going, Mr. Comedy Man.
Yeah. It's my dad joke for the day. No, he part of me will always love James Cameron for making Aliens. But it's just kind of getting annoying. His attitude of trying to be the best, trying to be the biggest is so frustrating. Like Endgame comes out, destroys box office records, and his response is not to congratulate the MCU for doing something spectacular. It's to put Avatar back in the theater so he can still say that Avatar is number one. It's like, bro, no one cares. That's all. That's what I got. How about you?
No, I agree. I think Charlize Theron is actually a badass in real life because, to be 40, she was 40 when she made this movie,
Oh wow.
and still
Well,
just
yeah,
thoroughly capable of that. Um, but
Keanu Reeves is 50.
she's
You know.
done some incredible things too. I mean, not just in this movie, but in the Mad Max Fury Road.
Oh, yeah.
Um, she was kind of a turn of the century action star as well, because like there was that string of like the Italian Job, you know.
Eon Flux.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, but I don't know if it was like this before. Like this movie
Well,
and
I mean,
Fury
we've
Road
gone so like
over the top.
hyper kinetic with what's possible, and the technical aspects of filming it. But that's also very much part of like the John Wick brand. Like we've really refined that. I think it delivers on the promise of what people thought they were watching during like the Bourne Identity type stuff, where it was like shaky and like you couldn't really tell what was going on. But now
Yeah.
you can actually tell what's going on, and you see
Yeah.
all of it, and it's just so well worked out.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the movie. Let's get into this.
Yes. Yes, sir. Aye, aye, Captain. Why did you want to talk about this movie? This was your recommendation. So
It
you got to
was,
introduce this.
yeah. I hadn't seen it in a long time, and I just wanted to do something a little, spin our wheels in a different direction. And we've hit John Wick and Nobody, and I just felt like, what, we should hit Atomic Blonde because it's part
Part
of.
of that expanded universe, I guess.
I I hope they
loose
don't
sense of
do
the
that.
word.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to. This was
I don't think
based,
so either.
yeah, this was based on a graphic novel called The
Yeah.
Coldest City,
Mm-hmm.
which was put out by Oni Press, which was the same publisher that did the Scott Pilgrim comic books. I don't know if you
Okay.
checked any of those out.
Does
Um,
Scott Pilgrim stuff or this one, The Coldest City?
either, yeah.
No.
Yeah,
No.
I read the first Scott Pilgrim book because there's like 6 of them because the first one was like free on Prime Reading, so it's like, yeah, download that, check it out. It was cool, and we're not talking about that, but when I was looking into this and just saw the Oni Press connection, it's like, oh, you know what, they do some interesting things.
What else have they done besides these two?
Well, this was like, oh, they did this. This is really an interesting thing because they're so completely different.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if there was like other examples. So,
Not off the top of my head. I'm
okay.
I'm a peasant when it comes to that stuff. I read comic books, but my that is about the extent of my knowledge on the subject. Other than they're clearly an interesting publisher because they take chances on things like this. Anyway, um, I didn't find a ton of research about the movie, but I did look into the graphic novel, so I got some tidbits on that. There's a couple
Okay.
differences. It's
Like what?
Well, it's black and white for one thing. So it's just stark black and white. And this movie is very colorful.
I I would kind of disagree in that the majority of the movie is like that blue tone because it's supposed to feel cold.
Hmm.
Hence the graphic novel title, and it takes place in winter. The
Yeah.
only time you see color is like nightclubs, you
Well,
know?
and there's that whole punk rock aesthetic when they do the graffiti and to set the scene.
Right.
There's a lot of reds and purples in there. But I mean, just because it's blue, like it's very sterile, but they use color pretty pretty effectively.
Yeah, like I mean, I would once again push back a little bit because it's like I think like when you say like they used it appropriately, yes. The because it's like this movie, I feel like I should only watch it in the summer because that would give me a barrier to how cold this movie feels.
Hmm.
Right? It's so crazy how well they did that. And I think that's like amazing when they're able to use color in a very specific way to generate that type of feeling. I feel like that's becoming more rare is to use color in movies as a way to project like emotions, you know. It seems like a lot of things are sterile, kind of like the MCU. MCU is colorful, but it's all the same colors, you know. So it's less stylized. This one is more stylized. I do agree with that. I just push back a little bit that it's super colorful, you know, because it's like I do remember like when they're in the nightclub when she's getting like a drink at a bar or something, and she meets the other second agent. It's like that's super colorful. There's these huge like very dark darks, and then like a lot of neon, which is awesome. It's the same type of thing in Pacific Rim. It's just that's the majority of the movie, where I feel like in this one they use that color very sparingly, you know. So that's my only pushback. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you see it other times too, like when she's getting into the tub full of ice after just getting thrown around constantly. But I don't know, it felt very colorful to me because of the use of color as a character. Not to say that colorful means here's the entire rainbow, you know, but because the look of it was very rich. So I think we're maybe just kind of like working the idea of color at a slightly different angle.
Yeah, I mean, when I think colorful, it's like I would say that the difference for me is that colorful means like robust. That's the general like like, oh, someone says it's colorful. It's like, yeah, they used every damn one of them.
Yeah,
You
okay.
know, like where it's like, I don't feel like they did in this one. I feel like they used a ton of blues, a lot of dark saturated blacks, and then sparingly with neon colors. You know,
And that icy
so that's
blonde always
that's
stands out.
right, right. So that's why there's a difference. If you're saying it's like colorful and like you use appropriate way to use color, yes. Just like it's a difference of opinion, I guess.
Finally, we agree on something.
Possibly. Depends on how facetious I want to be. I mean, sorry, talking to a graphic designer and
Yeah, all
illustrator.
right. All right.
You know, it's kind of my thing.
Uh-huh.
So, um, and at least that's what they tell me. I don't know who they is, but you know, those people.
The famous they, huh?
Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah.
What do you think about the use of music?
Yeah, I think it's really good. I think that there are times when like music can be done, or music from a time frame can be used really effectively. And I think the like it's like I did read into this because this is what I felt interesting. Most of the music was made before 1987 to fit into their timeline for this movie, except like one song, and that was like I don't even remember what it was, but it was made in 1988. And the reason why I find that so amusing is because it's like the movie takes place in 1989 at the fall of the Berlin Wall, right? So that's just so much extra effort to fact check when certain 80s songs were made, you know? And I'm sure there would have been people like, sir, this was made in 1990. You know, like this music, you know, because you'll have a carryover of a couple of years in between like certain areas of music, you know, but where it kind of sounds like from then, you know. But yeah, I like that attention to detail. And then they also they did a remake of Blue Monday, which was
Yeah.
the, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I really like this version. I actually have it in a my like I have a playlist on Spotify that's like 5,000 songs at this point, and it's like that's the Blue Monday that's in that playlist, and not the one by that other weird group. What's it called? They did a song in like the 2000s. They remade it, and then there was like the one from the 80s.
Orgy.
But this one, yeah, Orgy. I was gonna say like, isn't it like Orgasm? Like, no, it's just Orgy. I like this one a lot. And I feel like it fits the tone of the movie better than the original did, like that synthesizer tone. So yeah, that was pretty awesome. The difference is when I see a movie like Watchmen and they're using almost the same era of songs, it's so annoying in that movie because it's like every 2 minutes there's a new 1980s song thrown in there. I was like, see, we're in the 80s. We're doing it in the 80s. And that gets annoying. This one, it wasn't annoying. I can go into why it wasn't annoying. But
well, I think it's pretty simple why it's not annoying is because in Watchmen they're using it for very on the nose purposes, like Hallelujah when two characters are making love, or Hello Darkness, My Old Friend, you know, The Sound of Silence when we're playing over a funeral. You know,
right.
it's like we got to have that needle drop moment, you know.
Yeah, it's that movie in particular was so annoying where it's like I felt like I was getting taken out of the movie. But this one I didn't feel like that. Primarily because it's like they didn't use a ton of 80s music, and it would stop and start, like the same song would stop and start in between action sequences. It was really cool. Or like that Blue Monday song they played, I think at the beginning of the movie, not like at the very start, but somewhere in the beginning, And then they actually just took a middle segment of that towards the end of the movie when she's getting into the car after the hallway fight sequence.
Hmm.
You know, so it's like they were using bits and pieces of the music, not like the entire song. So
Yeah, and then they would do interesting things with it too, where like it would drop out almost like you're hearing it from the other car, and then when the car hits her, like now it's back full, and we're
yeah,
um, nobody kind of did stuff like that too. I don't have a specific example off the top of my head, but I just rewatched that recently, which got me kind of
it's a good
thinking
one.
about this. Where it's like, yeah, I'd kind of like to see this one again.
Yeah, produced by the same director of this movie. Nobody is.
Yes, right. We've mentioned that a bunch of times, and that's something we can talk about too, because we kind of hinted at that earlier, where I think because of those connections, certain people just kind of lump all of them together.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, we mentioned I, when you said that there's a criticism that people levy against Nobody, this movie, John Wick, um, that like, oh, it's the same people, like it's going to be the same movie. I, I think that's like a really lazy thing to do, and maybe that's just a current thing to do, right? Because these movies all came out so close together. Compare that to the '80s, right? With horror movies, I compare a lot of these two movements kind of the same way, where it's like director, stunt choreographer right now with these awesome action movies, and then like special effects designers and directors of '80s horror seem very similar, moving like how they're going forward. I don't think the same criticism was levied against any one of these horror movies when it was like, oh, it's the same director, same special effects guy. It was more of a celebration, like, oh, I can't believe they're working together again. Let's go see what they've cooked up this time. And now the criticism is like, why are these all why are all of these people working together again? I think that's unfair, you know.
Yeah.
I think the reason that they keep working together is they know how to make a good fucking action movie. And it's really interesting that this group of people is responsible for a lot of these awesome movies that we're seeing right now. You know, action movies like these fight sequences are incredible. You know, I think it's something to be celebrated, not something that should be levied at a movie for lack of creativity. You know,
Yeah,
that's
and
my thing.
it is kind of a lazy criticism, and I don't know what the reason for that is, where it's okay to do that for like this group of movies but not that group of movies,
Right.
because the fans definitely, like, to go back to your 80s analogy, the fans definitely weren't saying that. Your Siskel and Eberts were, where it's like, oh, here's another Wes Craven doing the same thing with the same criticism has gotten so just weird and out of hand, where it's like people just grasp at straws, and there's always someone out there that'll just agree with them regardless of how thoughtful it is or not. And
Yes.
I think people are just a little too quick to try and dunk on something because it gives them like some false sense of like intellectual superiority, even though it's not really a thoughtful or constructive or even meaningful criticism. Like in this case, because
Yes.
it's like, well, so what? The same people work together. Like, yeah,
Yeah, who gives a
obviously.
shit? Like, yeah, I'm sorry you didn't want like well thought out choreography and action sequences. I don't know, like that. Let's talk about the fucking stairway fight sequence into the apartment.
Hmm.
That's amazing. Like the whole thing. Like I've watched it so many times, and it's so well done. My question to the people that would levy that criticism, right? Oh, it's the same people again. They're just doing the same stuff. It's like, well, do you want that to be not exciting? Because it's like they all have worked together. Why would you not want them to work together again to pull off, to grab that lightning and stuff it in a bottle, so to
Hmm.
speak? You know, it's like they know what they're doing, so let them do what they know how to do, you know? Uh, it's incredible. Um, Charlize looks like a badass. I
Because she
can't.
is.
Yeah, she is, and it's like when you watch it, there's like glass flying everywhere, and it's just like the brutality of it so intense that by the end of it, it's like, yeah, they're probably just like they're both on the floor, they've beat the hell out of each other, right? And they're trying to get back up to have one of them finish the job, so to
Hmm.
speak, to kill the other one.
Yeah.
And it's just like you feel the pain, you feel like the ribs, hurting. It's like, man, all that glass is probably cutting up their hands as they're trying to get up. It's like, that's amazing. You want that. You want that visceral feeling in an action sequence. You want to feel like you're in the same room. They pulled it off, and how tired they are. And then every punch that's thrown actually looks like it hits them too. There's not weird camera tricks. It's like there's a couple scenes where like Charlize gets punched right in the stomach and her reaction looks like it hit her, not that she's acting like she got hit, you
Hmm.
know? So hats off to them. Hats off to Charlize, hats off to the choreography and the direction. It's
No,
superb.
yeah, and it really does feel like they're trying to kill each other. I mean, you got these
Yeah.
unstoppable Terminators that can take
Right?
inhuman amounts of pain from this smaller woman. But no, I mean, it really does look like you said, visceral, like they're out just trying to murder each
End each
other.
other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's exhilarating. And the sound effect design in it too is great. Um, there's some particularly gross sounds in there where it's like Charlize stabs some guy in the neck with a knife and like he pulls it out because it's not like in the side of the neck, it's more of like where the neck meets like the upper body,
Hmm.
right? So he pulls it out, but you can hear like the slushing sound of like the blood being released in the exit wound or then like in the wound after he pulls out the knife, where it's just like this water running sound. It's like that's gross. Like,
Yeah.
but all of that together creates this like very polished package where it allows you to feel those things and to have that come across of real dire straits, and to feel like I don't know if my hero is going to get out of this one feeling is hard to do now, I think, in an action movie, you
Which
know?
is interesting because as a framing device, you kind of already know that she's survived. You don't really know what's happening because of the whole debriefing that they're using to,
Exactly.
have her explain herself. It's not just exciting for the sake of being exciting. It also really kind of feeds into what I feel is like the overall um, mantra of this movie. And a lot of these movies are very much of like, because you think of like spy fiction, and you have like the little more glamorous, like the James Bond or Mission Impossible, whereas this is more of like, no, 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 th- it takes a toll. Like there's a human toll. um this is a terrible job. There's nothing glamorous about it.
No.
Especially as everybody just winds up dead or double crossing everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like Departed by the end of it, just not so fast, right? The Departed's like, oh yeah, everyone killed each other right in the elevator because everyone was double crossing each other. This
Did
is a little bit more drawn out, but yeah, it's the same type of thing.
right.
So
Did you have any problem like following the plot of this movie as you were watching it?
I did the first time. The second time, it was easier, you
Hmm.
know. Um, it's not that this is a highbrow action movie, but there's a lot of spy talk in this movie,
Hmm.
right? So of like this person's coming to do this, or you should trust this person because of that, or twists that kind of are subtle, right? So sometimes the people you think are good people are bad people, and those details to know like what side of the fence everyone's on gets a little muddy throughout this movie. That I guess that would be my only complaint about it, is that it seemed like there needed to be a little bit more of finger pointing in the story to make it easier to understand. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, no, it does, but I think because I agree with you because there is so much like blink and you miss it spy MacGuffin nonsense, but in trying to make it gritty and realistic, like that is actual spy MacGuffin,
sure. Yeah.
and but there's certain movies that they they have this same kind of like just super dry tone, and like they want to get it so accurate, and maybe they do, but it's just bores me to tears when I'm watching it.
Yeah, yeah,
There
yeah.
there are a couple movies like that where Robert De Niro directed one is called the Good Shepherd. It was about
Oh my
the formation of the CIA, and
yes.
that was so dry, and I felt like it was very well researched, but the research was more interesting than the movie, and it almost like look how well we've researched this that it's like, well, I don't care
I
about the story anymore.
I
And
totally I totally understand, because I the reason why I'm laughing is because I've seen Good Shepherd a few times now, just to try my best to piece it together, because
mhm,
it's a really interesting story, but done in the most boring way. That's and it's like where I need to know the details, and it's one of those movies where it seems like it's pretty straightforward. I'm talking about Good Shepherd still.
yeah,
It seems like it's pretty straightforward, but it's the meaning between the lines that you have to cipher out. So that's a problem for me when there isn't. It's like I need a break from my brain going in overdrive trying to piece together this mental jigsaw puzzle. I need a little bit less of that and a little bit of you just telling me exactly what's happening. Just a little bit more so I can have anchor points through the story.
yeah,
That was my problem with Good Shepherd. Is you can say like, "Oh, figure it out for yourself." Okay, but it's when the whole thing's figure it out for yourself. It's like, "Wait a minute. Am I going to have to do the same amount of research that you all did to make this story to understand this story?" Because I'm not following along with certain things.
probably, yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah. Or you might have to watch it with the subtitles on so you can be reading it,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
because it does fly by so fast. And another one that's like that is Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy with um, Gary Oldman. I mean, I
Yes.
saw that in the theater, and it's like, oh, cool, like a really gritty, interesting spy movie, and but
Yes.
it's not because I don't know. It's just told in the most droll way possible. Like there was a guy that fell asleep next to me, and he woke up and he's like, "Did I miss anything?" And I was so angry, like I wouldn't have told him if he did. It's like, no, it's just,
You just lie.
you're not gonna figure it out anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah,
this
going back to this.
this
Yeah.
does
Oh, go
have
ahead.
that tone though.
Yeah.
Like it very much has that tone, and there's definitely things with like the double and triple crosses that I didn't pick up on the first time, and I didn't know why, her and James McAvoy were trying to kill each other because
Yeah.
he just
They seem like friends most of the
the
story.
whole time, and then it's like, nope, I'm gonna take the target out so that he doesn't get out. Like,
Yeah.
huh? Where did that come from? Oh, but she just knows it all. Like, oh my god.
Right.
And then there's a whole thing where, like, because she was a triple agent in this. You pick up on that?
No, actually.
Because
No.
she
I knew I knew I got to second. I got to the double.
okay, yeah, because she was a MI6 agent, but then there's this character Satchel that they don't know who's a double agent for the Russians, turns out that she was Satchel the whole time, and then there's the triple twist at the end where she's actually working for the CIA.
Jesus. I guess no. I guess I knew the MI6 and the CIA one. Guess I didn't piece the Russian thing
Yeah,
together.
yeah, and that's why she turns on, or McAvoy turns on her there, and oh my God, like the zodiac chart of,
It's like that Charlie Day meme from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where it's like he's got crazy eyes and he's pointing to like a bulletin board of like a bunch of different photos and documents, and just like going crazy because he's like, and then all this other stuff's happening. That's what I feel like this movie is the Charlie Day meme. You know, it's like, and this is what's happening over here, and all these things are connected.
yeah, but that's what happens, and you just,
Right.
and again, I think that's a big part of the, you know, the spy life taking a toll is because her superiors are questioning, they're grilling her, because they don't, I don't know, it's just it's endless, and the levels of paranoia that those people must have,
Well,
just
right. The other thing is like, I don't know if this was like a joke or intentional in the movie, is that like spies in Berlin at the time seemed so prevalent that everyone was a spy. So it just seemed like it's not really clandestine at that point, right? If everyone is a spy and everyone knows everyone's a spy, well, why do you have to be so secretive? you know, like we're all spying here.
mhm.
Let's like you can't pull one over on me because I know you're a spy, you know. So is it just the layers of spying, like the triple agency, you know?
Yeah.
Uh
No, I
so
I think it is because, like you even have the part in the beginning where Percival, the James McAvoy character, like, you know, takes a Russian guy out who's part of their secret police, and it's just like I feel like there's a lot of fiction set around this specific event of the Berlin Wall falling, because it was probably like the absolute height of this kind of modern day spycraft.
I I wouldn't even be. I mean, it was probably happening all over the place. I bet you everyone was in Berlin at the time. You know, uh, I would imagine that like Germany felt like it was all going to crumble, like government was going to crumble during that time. You know,
Hmm.
uh, yeah. Like, I lost my train of thought. Doesn't matter. I don't know where I was going to go. I don't know what I was going to say. Sometimes this happens.
It's just another one of those triple crosses.
Right. Right. I do have something cool that I found. It might just be public knowledge for everybody, but so this movie like overlapped with John Wick Part 2, right? So this was already going, and then uh training for John Wick Chapter 2 was starting. They used the same stunt choreographers in both movies and the same teams like to do the stunts. So what happened was Charlize Theron and Keanu Reeves became sparring partners, and they became like competitive about it. That's really awesome. That like, yeah, I know our movies are kind of doing the same thing right now, but I
Hmm.
guess we should fight each other, you know.
Right.
And I wonder like, because that was my like, I said that to you earlier, where it was like, yeah, I feel like Charlize Theron has the same abilities as Keanu Reeves does with being able to know how many uh, um, moves he can do in a row.
Hmm.
I wonder if like he gave pointers to her on how to like be more proficient at that. And this is one of the things that I love about these movies. Same with Nobody, same with this one, is the camera is still, right? And there's not a lot of edits to different punches or kicks or throws or whatever, right? A lot of it's done in the same take, which I find really enjoyable and really exhilarating, um, because we've gone from the shaky cam of John Wick, right? And the nasty edits in Iron Fist from Netflix, where it was like, here's 43 seconds of fighting, and we did 100 edits, in that 40 seconds. And it's like we've gone from those two things, to what Jackie Chan has been doing for his whole life, right? Where it's like we're gonna calm down and we're gonna actually show you what's going on. So I find that amazing. That's why I keep coming back for the John Wick movies, is to see Keanu Reeves have a 2-minute fight sequence where there's not an edit there,
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome. That might be an exaggeration, but it's like, it's definitely not a half second here and then we're going to cut to something else, or we're going to put the world's heaviest gyroscope on the side of this camera so we can't even see what's going on, like in the Bourne movies. I don't think anyone saw any fight sequences. That's my joke, in any of the Bourne movies, because the shaky cam was all over the place and no one saw shit.
Yeah.
They just say that they saw something, So I'm
Um,
glad to see that in these movies where it's like, yes, thank you. I can see the fight sequence now, and it's awesome.
well, and there's something that's more immersive about it, just knowing that the actors there,
Doing it.
that you
Yeah.
can see them.
Yeah.
Would
Apparently, one more thing. In her training, she would grit her teeth a lot. She actually broke one of her front teeth from gritting during training. So those are fake now
Oh wow,
for Charlize. Yeah.
wow.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's awesome for the commitment, but man, I wouldn't want to be any part of that type of training. Gritting my teeth so much
Oh
that I'm
yeah.
breaking them.
Well,
So
and just the levels of commitment to getting tossed around like she did
right.
is. No, it's impressive. We've said that enough. Would you be surprised to know that the graphic novel didn't have very many action scenes in it?
No, I wouldn't be surprised. Um, I think action in comic books is like one of the hardest things to do, you know, especially like fight sequences. You can have like splash pages and stuff like that, but I think it's really hard to equate motion to this extreme in a comic book, you know,
Well, yeah. I can't think of a single car chase that's actually been exciting in a comic
in
book.
a comic. Right. Yeah.
Uh, no, I just thought it was fascinating because this loosely adapts. I mean, it actually very closely adapts the Coldest City, but it's so different, because of the way that they use their color palette to create stark images instead of black and white. The music is nowhere to be found, obviously, because that doesn't work in a comic book. And there's a lot, like I feel like one of the things that people take away from this, even if they don't follow the plot at all, is the really frenetic action sequences, which is none of these are real signatures of the source material. So I don't know. I just thought it was kind of fascinating how you can be like, what would be great? We're gonna take this comic and that's gonna be the script, but we're gonna do all this other stuff and go in the other direction.
Yeah. Um, I know that this was a passion project for Charlize. She read the book and loved it and wanted to make it into a movie. She's an executive producer on this and actually brought this idea to the director, and was like, I think you'd be a great asset for this movie. And this was also on the heels of Fury Road, So it's like I think she was like exhilarated to do something like this. Um, but I think with what you're saying, I think it was the plot that was interesting, not necessarily like, oh, this could be an action movie.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing I know that they did change was the introduction of the the character she meets at the bar, right? Who seems like we kind of know she's a spy-ish,
Mm-hmm.
maybe spy adjacent. I don't know. And that was the only addition to it. Um, And I guess they had to be like really careful because they didn't want to have it be like a lesbian scene where you're like, oh yeah, Charlize has a lesbian scene in this movie, and that's what they talk about. But they were trying to illustrate that like the character would do absolutely anything to get information out of people, you know.
Yeah.
So that was like the whole reason why the scene was there in the first place, you know. But that was like the only addition to it. So I'm curious if like they just used the comic book as an outline for the story, and then just went haywire, absolutely bonkers with the action sequences.
Hmm. Yeah, because
So
we can use this as a vehicle to, create a
right,
more like a different kind of action movie, but still have that core of the
like a
grit
good
and
story.
the grit and the realism.
Right, right. So it's pretty cool. And part two is coming. You know,
Is
that's
that official? Because
yeah,
they've been talking about it for a while.
yeah. Like recently, within like the last couple months, like it's been brought back up on the table, and they're like, "Yep, we're doing it. Just don't know exactly when." So,
Hmm.
but this movie is like what? Like it came out in like 2017. It seems really weird to like go 5 years and not have a sequel to something like this.
Mm-hmm.
But we also gotta realize like COVID was in there. Like
Yeah.
there's got to have been so many movies we don't know about that were greenlit that are just kind of like still in the bottleneck coming down because of COVID. Like, yep, we greenlit this, but COVID sucked, so we're pushing it back, So
Or just fell
or
apart completely.
right, right. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but yeah, I would love to see this character more. Um, I like you said, I don't want there to be team ups, right? Like I don't need Bob Odenkirk to fight alongside John Wick or with Charlize Theron in there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm referring to Keanu Reeves, I guess, now as John Wick permanently. He is no longer Keanu Reeves. He's transcended into the character that he's played.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I think
so
we pointed out in that episode too that like that movie had an actual title, and he just kept telling people, "I'm making this movie called John Wick," and that became the title.
oh shit, I don't remember that, but that's awesome. And we're just
Yeah,
I play a character called John Wick. Oh, what's the movie called? Oh, I don't know. We'll just call it John Wick.
it's this really cool thing. It's called John Wick. Um, yeah, I don't want a connected universe. I like that the Atomic Blonde is separate enough from the others that take place in modern day, where at least that won't be a direct overlap, even
Right.
even if they tried to go in that direction. There is a sequel novel called The Coldest Winter, but from what I understand, she's not in it, and it's all about the Percival character, and
Oh,
it's
okay.
actually a prequel.
Okay.
So I don't know. Maybe the whole thing with setting up the triple cross as the CIA agent was their way of kind of like leaving the door open for a sequel, because that was kind of something where it's like, did we really need this? This feels kind of like we didn't really need another turn on top of all these other turns,
Right.
So to have that just felt kind of unnecessary. Unless it's like, oh no, she's coming to work for us now because MI6 burned
Yeah.
her or something.
Yeah. I mean, if she makes another turn, she's just back to the beginning, right? Like, like
Yeah, I mean,
how
who's
many how
left?
many turns can you make? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought this was cool. It was a lot of fun to revisit.
Oh yeah. It's up there for me. Um, there there's been like a few times, I don't know, maybe in the past 5 or 6 years where I felt like movie making for this type of action, uh or just skill level, not necessarily movie making, but skill level to have the right people in the right spot to make something really unique. um and I think we've finally like gotten over the hill of making things look flashy and cool to then like, let's get beyond that and actually like show an audience the fight, you know. And it's really nice to see it. Like, it was super exhilarating in the Daredevil television show with the first 2 seasons with the hallway fight sequences. John Wick has always delivered, and then to see it again in something like this, it's just awesome. When you have examples and in Nobody as well, when you have examples of like this as a like kind of a pedestal on what people should be doing in a hand-to-hand combat sequence, like, I'm glad that there's examples out there like this now, you know, like, do it like this. This is how you get a fan. This is how you get like an exhilarating sequence. Don't give me 50 million edits in 10 minutes, you know. It's nauseating. Don't make a shaky cam and have that be the vehicle for frenetic energy, you know. So it's nice to have the visuals recalibrated to something like this. Following me?
No, that's well said. I'm really curious to see like how far you can push the envelope with something like this, because you know, it's like every iteration of action movies, at least in my lifetime, has always felt like you know, you look at the stuff in the 80s and it's some pretty silly shit, but at the time you're like, my God, this is amazing. Like, I totally believe that Arnold as Commando could just walk through, you know, gun down a whole thing, or Stallone could do that or whatever. And then, you know, 20, 30 years later, you see like the modern version of that. And it's like, no, this is the real stuff. And it's like, I don't feel like we'll ever get to a point where this doesn't age well. The only thing I was going to add to that is it's just always fascinating to see like where the envelope gets pushed.
Yeah, well, it's exciting, right? You know, maybe we'll see all these things with like, you know, CGI faces of licensed action heroes.
All right.
You thought this movie was mediocre. No. Don't say, oh, I didn't really say that. It's kind of what you said right in the beginning.
I didn't dislike it. I did say that right in the beginning. I didn't dislike it.
And
I don't know. I just, it's probably has it's like a bunch of like little minor things, like little minor quibbles that I'm probably making a mountain out of a molehill with.
I would say that that's accurate.
I think that okay.
Without even knowing what you're gonna say.
All right. Well, podcast over. Hey, we know how this is gonna go.